Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Conversation with Shenila, where we explore the stories, leadership experiences which shape our profession. So, I'm Shenila Makhani, and I'm delighted to have you with us today. One of the things I love most about these conversations is discovering the unique journeys that bring people into project management. Every professional has a story, and often it's the unexpected path that teach us the most. Today's conversation is one of those stories. It's a story about courage, about embracing change, and about discovering new purpose. I am delighted to welcome Stephanie Jaeger, a project management professional from Kenya, whose journey from healthcare to project management is both inspiring and thought provoking. Stephanie, welcome to Conversation with Shanila. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
Great. So, before we explore your transition into project management, I would love our audience to get to know you a little better. So, tell us about yourself. Where did your professional journey begin? And what did your career in healthcare look like before you entered the world of project management?
Okay, I actually was born and brought up in southern Germany, right in front of the Alps. So my family life was influenced by living in that area. It's a tourist area, it's a dairy area, and quite rural. So it's not a small village, but a small town. And when I finished A levels or the equivalent of A levels that we have, I decided to go to nursing school and did my 3 years of nursing career. And that training was actually in a church school. And we were at a normal government hospital, but the nursing and the nursing school both belonged to the church. And I think that had quite a big influence on some of my choices. So like we all lived together in the boarding house there, and a lot of the former students who were now out in the mission field all over the world would come by and tell us stories. And somehow it captured my attention, and I said I want to go to Africa. And so after I finished nursing school, I decided to get a bit more experience, and I worked there in the A&E unit for another 1.5 years, and then did some special training in tropical disease and packed my bag. No, I went to America first. I need to say that. And did preparation training for 1 year. So I was in North Carolina and again in the mountains. Seems to be a story here. And then came back to Germany, worked in another hospital, now in a surgical ward, and then packed my bags and came to Kenya. And when I came to Kenya, of course, first I had to do the relevant processes to be registered as a nurse here, which included 6 months of that attachments, which was quite adventurous because those days there was a lot of things that were really going wrong, like medicines never reaching the hospitals and things like that. And it was very um, insightful for me because I learned very important things to get prepared to go into the bush and become the bush nurse I had been dreaming of. And then I worked in northern Kenya, again on top of a mountain, and we did the usual work you do in the bush. We had a small health center which had like 10, 12 beds for inpatients. And otherwise, the main work was outpatient work. And we do even do mobile clinics where we went into our little airplane and would fly to other areas and start treating patients there. Sometimes just a table under a tree was a clinic or a
Oh,
shed somewhere. So
interesting.
yeah, those were very interesting times. And I loved the work, but I started having arguments with the missionaries pretty soon because for me, I'm a straightforward person and I cannot stand it when people become dishonest or portray things in a way that's not true. And so after a while, I decided to leave them and joined a company in Nairobi. And here in Nairobi, first I worked for a health maintenance organization, which is both health insurance and health provider. And I was first a rescue nurse doing road and air rescues and clinic work. And then I became a care manager, meaning you go to all the hospitals and check on the patients to make sure that A, they're admitted for whatever their doctor claims they're admitted for, and that the treatment looks appropriate. And if there's anything that we felt wasn't right, we would get relevant doctors involved. We also would comb through the bills to make sure that patients are not being charged for things that have nothing to do with the medical treatment.
Okay.
And with them, then later I got a chance to go up to the north again, and I worked in the UN camp. Now, that was not a refugee camp, that was the camp for the staff, their base camp for all the operations in South Sudan, but it was in Kenya. And so that was a whole new set of challenges because people there would tell us that life is so tough and they're living in hardship. And I'm like, what hardship? They cook for you, they wash for you, you have your little hut that you're living in. And the actual hardship was because it was a no family station, so people were there without their families. Their spouses and children faced their own problems in Nairobi without them, and they would be there, most of them for like 6 to 9 weeks, and then you get 1 week off for rest and recovery. And of course, being with so many people from all over the world in a camp situation where you had shared showers, the showers were out in the open. Okay, you had a wall around you, but there was no roof. And some of the ladies were always very worried that the pilots might see you when they're flying in from their operations.
Okay.
But and then of course there are stressful situations. You'd have people that had gone through severe traumas in Sudan. When they come back on their way to Nairobi, you would give them the first debrief. And I worked very closely with the psychologist that the UN had. And of course, there were a couple of injuries or people that got very sick, and we had some adventurous rescues. So I've never officially been in South Sudan, but I've been there a couple of times to remove patients where you land the plane, pick the patient, and take off again.
Okay. Interesting. So listening to your story is clear that, healthcare also demands compassion, critical thinking, and the ability to make decisions under pressure. And those are the qualities that also resonate strongly with project management. So, Stephanie, every career transition begin with a decision. So can you take us back to that moment? Already you took us back actually to many moments, but what inspired you to step away from healthcare and explore project management?
The hard realities of life. At that time, I still Kenya still didn't have permanent residency, so I depended on work permits, and healthcare companies weren't willing to employ foreigners anymore. And so I ended up working for an outfit that had big plans but didn't have the money to do it. So when I realized they hadn't even applied for the work permit and it's not what they had promised, then I called up the husband of a former colleague who had offered me a job before and asked him if the job offer is still on. And
Okay.
at that time, he was providing the link between the healthcare providers and the healthcare insurers because the internet wasn't that developed yet and so on. We're talking of what, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And I worked with them for a while, and that's where I was first somehow involved in project management, but more from an administrative point of view. And then they were basically rigged out of business. I won't go into details, but they had to close down. And one of the shareholders of the company was the owner of the then biggest IT company, and he offered me a job in his company. And I'm like, okay, I'll work for you, but what will I do? I'm a nurse. And he's like, no, 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 I'll find something for you. You're good in customer service. So I joined them, and first I was customer relations manager. And basically, any client who had problems would end on my desk. So I would deal with their problems. And turned out a lot of the problems were in projects. So I found myself already going to project sites and talking with the clients, calming down both parties, trying to sort problems, the day-to-day things that project managers deal with in high pressure projects. And then one day, the managing director called me in his office and he looked at me and he said, "I want you to be project manager." Now, by that time, I was in my mid 40s. I wasn't going to change my career
This
that
is interesting.
drastically. And I told him, "Listen, I know nothing about project management. Please, it's better for you and the company if you employ someone who knows what they're doing." So he left me alone for a few months and then he called me to his office again. And he had one of the other managers sitting with him, probably to give him courage. And he told me that he wants me to do project management. And I'm like, but I thought we had discussed that. So it went back and forth. And then he's like, if you don't do project management, I'm sucking you right now. And you can imagine, I'm on a work permit. I have no standing in the country if they're sucking me right now. And I had nowhere to go. So I told him, okay, fine. Since you're doing it this way, I will do project management. But just remember, I don't know what I'm doing. So if I do it wrong, that's your risk. That's not me. And that's how I ended up getting into project management. And quickly I realized that the projects that had the biggest problems were at that time the ones that were dealing with data infrastructure. And so I found myself on all these construction sites, learning about data cabling and the difference between a data cable and a fiber cable and what is a switch, what is a router. But later I realized that what actually helped me to gain the respect of the team, because they were a team of people, most of them were not permanent, and they were on a casual basis. Nobody wanted to confirm them. And they had very high pressure projects and they were very, very frustrated. And suddenly here is a perceived senior person who's sitting with them in the dust and asking them what they're doing. And that really made a big difference for them. And then I basically also kept on demanding that I need some kind of training. And first I did training in MS Project because in all the lists of trainings that they had from their normal training providers, that was one of the first ones that popped up. So I did a training in Microsoft Project. And with that, I was on their list for when they sent out the schedules for the new trainings. And they had just started doing PMP training. Now I'd
Okay.
looked at other project management trainings. I had no idea, yeah. And the Kenyan schools at that time that were offering some kind of project management training, they all didn't answer to emails, their phones were not working or were not being picked, and there was just no way of contacting them. And then I stumbled across two things. One is Prince 2 and the other one is PMP. And Prince 2 was so much more expensive, I knew they would never pay for it. And that's how I chose PMP training.
Okay.
And then when I got into the training, the first day I sat there, what as I was doing the introduction about what is a project, what do you do in a project, and he started talking about goals, risks, budgets, and so on. And I'm thinking, that sounds like nursing care planning. And I realized we were doing the same thing in nursing care planning, only that it wasn't a project we were dealing with, it was a patient. And then I said, okay, I can do that. And that's when I said, okay, I have to learn as fast as I can. The PMI Kenya chapter was still in formation at that time. And my trainer happened to be one of the board members. Those days that was still possible. And so he invited me to the monthly meetings. And I said, I need as many mentors as I can find. And I got involved very quickly. And that's also when my volunteering journey as in PMI started.
Great. So I think you were the accidental project manager who I think we transitioned from healthcare to project management. I think sounds interesting. So making such a career, significant career change is not easy, Stephanie. So what was some of the biggest challenges you experienced during that transition?
I think it was getting over the imposter syndrome because I was still in this mindset that I have to understand data cabling completely. I have to know what exactly they're doing.
Okay.
And doing the training that early, I also realized I actually qualified for the PMP because I'd done projects all along. As a nurse, especially when you're in remote areas, you do projects. I'd even done a construction project, but I never perceived myself as a project manager. And now through the training to understand you're not the subject matter expert of the project. You're just the expert on project management, just in quotes, of course. That was a long learning process for me. And I also learned very quickly that it really helps to understand a bit of what's going on.
Sounds good, actually. So, Stephanie, was there any defining moment when you realized I have made the right decision? This is where I belong.
um, I think it was a process because before I had already realized bedside nursing is too much of same old, same old. I was bored in it, and I'd done all kinds of other things. I'd become a medical quality manager. I'd been a school nurse. I'd been many things, and then I'd done a Bachelor of Business Administration in Healthcare Management, and couldn't find a job with it. So I knew I needed to change something so that I find a job. And suddenly I found myself actually enjoying going to these project sites and the sense of pride when you're driving through town and we're like, I've done something in that building. We've done something in that building. You see those cameras there? Us, we installed them. So that's when I realized I found something that I really enjoy, and the skills that I learned as a nurse are not wasted because I still need them.
Great. So, looking back today, how has your understanding of project management evolved? Because what does the profession mean to you now compared to when you first entered into it?
Mm, I think when I first entered, it was this scary big new thing. And I wasn't sure I could fit into these shoes. And then through time, I learned you can actually manage any project, but not every project might be suitable for you. So like I realized very quickly, I love doing the stuff on constructions, but as a subcontractor, not with the main contractor. I would never want to be the project manager in charge of the entire construction. And I also did projects in areas that were really strange to me, like IT projects. Not just data cabling, but suddenly I found myself doing cybersecurity projects. And I think that's also something where you very quickly learn to ask the right questions. And when you realize that by asking the right questions, you're still on top of things. And
Yeah,
it's not who has to be happy with the technical details. It's the technical people that need to be happy. So you need to ask them, are you okay with this? Is this what you wanted to achieve? And then you get a lot of camaraderie through that because they feel like you're respecting them. But also, it makes you understand you can be very successful with that, even if you're not very familiar with the subject matter.
agree. So, Stephanie, if you reflect on your journey so far, what has been your biggest lesson?
Mm, I think it's the importance of people skills You know,
Yeah.
in our world, I think sometimes there is way too much stress on how many degrees do you have, how many masters, people are doing PhD, and soft skills are often neglected along the way. But what really helped me as a project manager is that skill that you learn as a nurse to kind of read between the lines. You look at the patient, they might tell you they're fine, but you can see they're in pain.
Yes.
And that skill is very good as a project manager because when people talk things that they think might need to be said, but it's not the truth, you will know that very quickly. And I think to me, that's also something I've really stressed with anybody that I've mentored, that we need to develop our soft skills. And the other thing is also in Kenya, any project team is a multicultural team. You have your Kenyans, you have Kenyan Christians, you have Kenyan Muslims, you have people from the village, you have people from town, you have the local Asian community, and that is from most of them are either from India or from Pakistan, but we do
Okay.
have people from anywhere. And these days, especially in the software sector, you throw in your uh, Chinese people as well. So you have all these cultures that you're dealing with, and you can either be intimidated by it or have fun exploring these cultures. And to me, that has been things, one of the things that I enjoy most is learning about these cultures. I can see Sarah is
Uh,
asking a question
yeah.
here.
So yeah, that's what I was actually waiting. So before we proceed, right, with further, you can say conversations, let's have the question. So Zara has mentioned, right, that what is that one thing you wish you had known earlier in life, especially as a leader?
I think it's this believing in yourself because
Yeah.
I came from this that as a teenager, I didn't even dare have my own opinion. I had my own opinion, but I wouldn't voice it
Hmm.
because I was so desperate to fit in.
Yeah.
And the one thing that really helped me or changed things for me in my career was this guy that I called up, the husband of my former colleague who had offered me a job. And I actually asked him, why do you want me to offer me a job? And he said, because you're a go-getter. And I'm like, what? I'd always perceived myself as this victim that is waved around by the winds of time. And he's like, no, you focus on something and you get it done. So you are a go getter. And that's when I realized how I perceive myself might be totally different from how everybody else perceives me.
Interesting
And
because
that,
yeah, this is the attitude people expect that.
yeah, and I
Hmm.
wish I would have known that 20 years earlier.
No worries. So one thing, Stephanie, I enjoyed asking every guest is about purpose, So now so much time you have spent in this career, right? What motivates you today? What continues to inspire you to learn, grow, and contribute to the project management profession?
See, now in my stage in life where I am, it's not so much about career anymore. It's more about what do I enjoy doing. So projects that I enjoy and I try to look for are now things where I know I have an impact on either on society or on young people. So to me, it's much more important that I influence someone to help them grow than it is to chase that job that pays you a million shillings.
Okay. So, Stephanie, many people are watching this conversation and maybe considering, a career transition for themselves. So perhaps they are feeling uncertain or wondering, if it's too late to start again. So based on your experience, what would you suggest or say to them?
I mean, when I changed my career, I was 46 years old, and I was going through perimenopause, so it wasn't an easy time in my life. And still, I managed, and a whole new world opened for me. And this whole new career opened the world of PMI for me, which means suddenly I had a global family. I met people like you. I would have never met you if I hadn't become a project manager. And uh, I think change is necessary. Right now, I'm also facing another time of change because things change in your country. In our country right now, the economy is very low. And so the way we used to get contracts doesn't work anymore. Plus, I also had to realize I'm too old to be employed because most companies, when they go through all the CVs they receive for a position, they sift out people by age and certifications at the step one. And I realized, okay, the normal way you send an application somewhere, it doesn't work anymore. You can still, of course, get jobs through connections, through people you know and who believe in your abilities. But next year, I'll have reached the official retirement age in Kenya, and that's why it's difficult.
Okay.
And then also, we used to get a lot of projects where you could even do part-time work. So I could have two different clients or just have one client and more time for myself. And because in a lot of these software projects, your team members have their normal job to do as well. And they need time for that. So you can't be on their back every single day. So for me, it usually worked out very well to come in 3 days a week. But now suddenly, most of the employers feel like they're not getting enough out of you. So they'd rather have you come in 45 hours a week instead of 20 hours a week. And the other thing is that companies in this economic situation don't have that much money for the kind of consultancy that we were also doing, where we help companies with their processes as we manage their projects and setting maybe up their project management office and making it fit their environment. They don't have the time for that. They're fighting for survival. So I need to decide myself, what do I want to do? Do I want to go back to 45 hours a week? Or do I want to develop other things? Meanwhile, I'd also tried a lot of things and I realized classroom teaching is not my thing. I love doing workshops, but classroom teaching, you just don't have the time to engage people. And so I would miss that. That doesn't mean classroom teaching is bad. I know there is a lot of people who love teaching and who do it from the bottom of their heart, but it's not me. So I think the most important thing is, if you're looking at a change, don't just look at the money side of things or the fame side of things. I remember there was one lady who wanted to become she was actually a Microsoft engineer, and then she wanted to become big construction project manager for those mega billion-dollar projects. And she did the training and everything, and then she started doing at least smaller projects in construction industry, and she realized very quickly that's a very rough environment. And for her, it was hard because she was better suited for the software environment, which also has its own challenges. Every environment has challenges, but the construction sites were not her thing. So she went back to doing software projects and is happy where she is right now. So
Makes sense.
sometimes you also have to dip your toe in and see some things, try something out.
I think absolutely. Experiments sometimes work, sometimes not work, but you don't have regret why you didn't try it.
Exactly.
So we have one comment on your previous conversation by Zara that it almost always someone who believes in you before you believe in yourself. And I think I can't agree more to it, Zara. So I think I absolutely agree. So I think before we move on to our next segment, I have one question from Rosina Vatsaria.
Uh-huh.
That how do you think project management will adapt to evolving and growing technologies in the future?
I think it will keep changing completely. I mean,
Hmm.
we have already in our time seen the change from doing project plans and doing all those nice graphics. Now it's being done by AI. And we can concentrate on the people, which before often we didn't have the time. And I think it's more and more about leadership, but adaptive leadership. So anybody who says it's my way or the highway will go under eventually unless they adjust. And I think we need to be very, very open-minded and keep being willing to learn new things. Like right now, I'm also privately learning a lot about AI. I've never used it
Hmm.
for preparing documents or anything, but just the things you can do with it, and it will take over a lot more things in our life.
I
I
agree.
don't
I
even,
think, yeah, adaptability is the key. I completely agree
and
on that. Yeah.
uh, and things like quantum computing are basically knocking on the door. We don't read the big reports, but Microsoft and all these other companies, they have done so much, and that will completely change how computing is done and how also softwares and apps are being used, because everything will be so much faster and so much more efficient. And suddenly also the kind of data centers we need will completely change. So that data infrastructure that I used to do will not be needed anymore in my eyes once they figure out how to cool things effectively.
Hmm. Makes sense. Okay.
Uh,
So, Stephanie, now it's time for our signature segment on Conversation with Shenila, the final mile. So, I would like to ask you a few short questions and just
uh-huh.
answer with the first thought that comes to your mind. All right.
Okay,
So, are you ready?
sure.
Okay. So, leadership in one word.
Servant leadership is the way to go.
Okay. One book that has influenced your life or career.
The book we read in the Leadership Institute masterclass, The Leadership Challenge,
Okay.
which actually led me to embrace servant leadership and understand servant leadership.
Great. The best career advice you have ever received.
That's actually a funny one. That was when I was still a nurse. I always liked asking questions, and I realized many times when something new is introduced, everybody else keeps quiet. So first, I felt like I'm the most foolish person on the ground. I just am too stupid to understand. And one time, somebody told me, you need to understand, most of these people have the same questions, they just don't dare ask them. And the only foolish question is the one that you don't ask. So ask your questions.
Great. One quality every project manager should develop.
I think it's an open mind.
Okay. So complete this sentence, Stephanie. Success means,
Success means, to me,
yeah,
it
to
actually
you.
means that I enjoy what I'm doing and that I see people around me grow.
Okay. And what leadership is?
Leadership is helping others grow.
Great. And finally, if our audience remembers just one thing from your story today, what should you like that one message to be?
Mm, I think the biggest thing is that change is a constant. We will have to change the way we're doing things. We might have to change our career. We might have to change our approach to what we're doing. Or we might want to change it because what excited us 10 years ago may not excite us now anymore.
Absolutely. I completely agree. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for sharing your story so openly and authentically. What I find more inspiring is that your journey reminds us that careers always follow, and I would say don't always follow a straight line. Sometimes the greatest opportunities comes when we are willing to embrace uncertainty, trust ourselves, and take a deep leap of faith. So your story is a powerful reminder that our previous experiences never leave us. They become part of the leader we are today. So thank you once again for being part of Conversation with Shenila. It has truly been a pleasure.
So thank you for having me.
Great. So, to everyone who joined us today, thank you for being part of this conversation. I hope Stephanie's journey reminds you that growth often begins outside your comfort zone. So, whether you are considering a career transition, pursuing a new certification, or simply looking for inspiration in your professional journey, remember that every meaningful change starts with a single decision. So, if today's conversation resonates with you, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever made a significant career transition? What did it teach you? If you enjoyed this episode and this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might be inspired by Stephanie's journey. Until next time, I'm Sheila Makhani. Thank you for joining Conversation with Shanila. Keep learning, keep leading, and keep the conversation going. Bye and take care.